and welcome to another video from our series, The Best Games of Viswanathan Anand. And here he is playing against Vassily Ivanchuk. Yes, I have already brought a game between those two players in our playlist, but this is another game that I haven't shown yet. So Vassily Ivanchuk is playing here with the white pieces. This game happened in Linares, Spain, in the year of 1992. Let's take a look at that. This is amazing maneuvering from both players. Ivanchuk starts with e4 and Anand replies with, of course, c5, the Sicilian defense. Knight to f3 was played, d6, now d4 opening the Sicilian, pawn takes, knight takes, and here knight f6 from Anand. Knight c3 defending the pawn, and now knight to c6 and bishop to g5. Attacking the knight, so e6, now the knight is pinned, but no problem because the e5 square is really well guarded. So queen to d2 was played, and now a6, protecting the b5 square and already preparing to attack on the queen side. Long castling here from Vassily Ivanchuk, and now h6, questioning the bishop. Bishop goes back to e3, and now knight takes d4, bishop takes d4, and now b5, and already start attacking here on the queen side. Vassily Ivanchuk has to do something, or defend, or to attack on the king side, and he chooses to attack on the king side with the f3. Queen a5 was played, and now a3, just protecting the pawn on a2, and now e5. Anand attacks the bishop. The bishop goes back to e3, and now bishop to e6. Now trying to cover this hole after this e-pawn advance. The weak square here in the chessboard is this d5 for the black. So bishop to e6 already putting the bishop in a very good diagonal. King to b1 was played, and now bishop to e7, preparing to castle, and then g4. Vassily Ivanchuk, one of the best players by that time, starts an immediate attack on the king side. And here, what do you do as a black player? If you want to castle, but you cannot because of this queen is unprotected here on a5. For example, if black tries to castle now, Vassily Ivanchuk could have played knight to d5, now attacking the queen, and of course you cannot capture the queen here on d2 because of knight e check. Knight takes e7 check, intermediate move, capturing and being a piece up. So it's not possible to play that. Black would have to bring back the queen, but then white would capture the bishop, just eliminating one defender of this d6 pawn, and white would simply be much better in this position with the pawn up and nothing to fear. So that's why in this position Anand didn't castle, and he played rook to b8. Waiting move, and also preparing to push b4. So knight d5 was played anyway, and now you can, of course, capture the queen because the bishop is now guarded by the king. So queen takes d2 was played, knight takes f6 first, trying to decoy the defender of the d6 pawn. So that's why Anand preferred to recapture with the pawn instead of the bishop. Pawn takes f6, and now rook takes on d2 and h5, and then start attacking here this pawn on g4, and you cannot defend with h3 because you simply capture, and the pawn is pinned, so the rook is hanging. So that's why the game continued with rook to g1, and after h takes u4, f takes u4, then bishop to c4. Anand goes with this incredible idea to exchange the light squared bishops and try to put his rook here on h3 and get some space, a tempo over this bishop, and also make pressure here on the h-file. So that's why the game continued with b3, now attacking the bishop. Bishop takes f1, rook takes f1, and rook h3, attacking the bishop. Rook to e2, protecting the bishop, and now king to d7, very active king here from Anand. G5 pushing the pawn, and now king to e6. So it seems like Anand is one piece up because his king is actively playing now, and Vassily Ivanchuk's king is not playing actively right now. So g takes f6 was played, bishop takes f6, and now bishop to d2, just leaving the rook for other duties instead of only guarding the bishop. Bishop to e7 was played, and now bishop to e1. with this amazing idea of protecting the pawn with the bishop and not protecting with the rook, and just freeing the rook to play in other areas of the board. So f6 was played, bishop to g3, protecting the pawn, and now Anand goes with this incredible idea. I mean, what do you do here? Maybe you want to play the rook here to d8 or to help pushing the pawn, but here Anand pushes the pawn immediately to d5 and using his king as another piece over the board. So pawn takes and king takes, and the king of Anand is actively playing in this game. This is just beautiful. The game continued with rook to f5, and with a terrible threat here. If black plays something like any other, this, for example, rook to c8 seems a very good move, but this doesn't work in this position because of bishop takes e5, and after pawn takes e5, then rook f takes e5, and white is getting his piece back and just being 2 pawns up. It would be very, very good for white. Another sharp line here is not capturing the bishop, but playing king to e6 instead. Very, very strange line. So bishop takes f6 with a check, king takes f5, and bishop takes e7, and it's not clear what's going on in this position. So Anand preferred not to go with this, and he played king to c6, immediately not allowing that idea of the bishop sacrifice. So the game continued with rook from e to f2, and now rook to h6, protecting the pawn on f6, and king b2, just improving the position of the king. King goes to d7, and now that Anand has avoided that bishop sacrifice, he comes with this very nice idea. Let's see how he maneuvers this. Rook to e2, and now bishop to d6, overprotecting here the pawn on e5, and after rook to f3, rook to c8, and after bishop to e1, king goes back to e6. So Anand could make this beautiful maneuver of bringing the king to d5, then bring the king to c4, and then bring the king back after maneuvering and bringing another defense to the pawn on f6 and bring the bishop to help on the defense. So very, very special maneuvering here from Anand. The game continued with rook to d3 and rook to h7, rook to g3, then bishop to c5, king a2, and now rook to d7. Both players are maneuvering, trying to find more space. Rook to c3, and now rook from c to c7. Now both rooks are protecting each other. H4, and now rook to d1. So Anand goes with this special maneuver. He's just waiting for some mistake from Ivanchuk. Ivanchuk continues with bishop to f2, and now bishop to d6. It's possible to exchange the rooks now, but rook to g3 was played instead. And in this position, Anand goes with a very beautiful sequence here. If you want to pause the video now and try to find here the move that was played by Viswanathan, Anand in this position is worth trying because it's very beautiful. And I believe you have found, and I hope you have found the move, e4 here. What a nice move here from Viswanathan. Anand just attacking the rook and sacrificing the pawn with check. Beautiful. So rook takes e4 was played, and now bishop to e5, protecting the check. Not only protecting the check, but giving support for Anand to deliver this beautiful checkmate here on a1. And what do you do? There is no easy way to defend, because if, for example, you play b4 and hoping to bring the safe room here for the king, but then rook takes c2 followed by rook b2 is just checkmate. What else can you try to do here? c3? Well, c3 doesn't work because of rook to d2 check, and bishop is hanging. So after king b2, rook takes f2, and black is winning. So after this beautiful bishop e5 here, Ivanchuk decides to sacrifice the exchange. So rook takes e5 check, and after f takes e5, king to b2. But after rook d2, Vassily Ivanchuk resigned here the game. He resigned because there's nothing left to do here at this position. I mean, the pawn on c2 is hanging, too much pressure here in the position, and if you play like rook c3 to defend the pawn, then rook takes and king takes, and the bishop is hanging. I mean, the position is just lost here for white. That's why Vassily Ivanchuk resigned Here the game. A beautiful victory here from Anand, this Indian chess legend. And let's take a look at the report at chess.com for the stats. And yeah, Viswanathan Anand make this perfect game, no inaccuracy, no mistake, no blunder, no miss to win, just the perfect game. Of course, he cannot go to 100% accuracy or close to that because not all the moves were considered the great, but the best moves by the computer. But this is incredible accuracy here for Viswanathan Anand. And Vassily Ivanchuk, yes, he has made no mistake, but because of his little and small inaccuracies, then Viswanathan could make it and win the game. So yeah, that's it. I hope you have enjoyed this game. I hope you have enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for your audience and see you next video. Bye.